25, so we need to head back because you know we have I don't know Mad Max when you designed the first Cyberpunk.
Oh man, it actually came from all over. Originally, the first thing I ever got into along this line is the movie Blade Runner. And the movie Blade Runner is my favorite movie. I have so many different copies of it. I have so many director cuts. I have scripts, you name it. I have a 6-scale action figure of Roy Batty.
Oh my!
We're serious. So that was the beginning, and I remember thing for me, because the big point about Hardwired is that it's one of those rare cyberpunk stories where the heroes win, and they win big time. So those were the two first steps, and strangely enough, I hadn't actually seen Eddie Gibson till almost he came about because I was driving across the Bay Bridge late one night. I saw San Francisco at the night, and I said, the city at night. The night city. Hey, we can do something with that. So the thing is that the 80s worked really well for cyberpunk because it was a period where we had some amazing technology that was just coming to the fore, so that I know where things are moving to. So it's not like, you know, I have some prescient vision or something. It's more that I did the homework, so I know where it's probably going to end up. And being able to do that means that the stuff you write is going to feel right. And that's the important part. You guys out there, in this room right now, there's probably about 1,000 people. On second thought, I did do a tabletop game where everyone dies, but that's another story. You want to have heroes, but they don't have to be super badass heroes. What they have to be is people who are willing to lay it down to win. You know, if you go to Edge Runners, everybody in Edge Runners is committed to what they believe. And so when David steps off the tower, he's going to do that because it's what he believes is right. And, you know, all of that stuff fits because the genre itself is kind of a romantic genre. It's a genre where you do big, you do flashy, you do it with style, and you do it because you believe in it.
Understanding of the genre, because, you know, when you started, it was, I don't know, an idea. Right now we're in entirely, you know, different civilization, entirely different society, and somehow, as I mentioned earlier, you're still fresh and you still like incorporate, you know, those changes to your games.
Well, the thing is, it's fairly easy because, again, if you do your homework, you kind of know where things are headed, and that really helps. You know, I can look at 1 million trends, but I can pick about 10 out right now that pretty much we figured we were going to see sooner or later. For example, all the nonsense we're hearing over in Russia, you know, we brought back the Soviet Union in cyberpunk. Why? It was a thing that was possibly going to happen. The technology is a lot more about how to do a decent game design, and 2020 evolved out of that. Plus we knew more about what was going to happen in the world that would make that work. We had a side trip when we did what's called Cyberpunk V3, where we tried to experiment with more transhumanism. But what we discovered was transhumanism isn't the same field. And it took me a few years to figure that out. And I was talking to my brother Dave about it. And what he pointed out was, well, in transhumanism, you're working things out and it's going to be okay. There's not that element of, I'm going to do this whether I'm doomed or not.
It is.
Hey, my guy, represent.
I was also wondering, how does designing video game systems differ from building a tabletop mechanics, you know?
Oh boy, yeah. About the time when I first was approached by CD Projekt, I was teaching video game design. at a local college, at the college level. And fundamentally, tabletop design is the rootstock of how video game design works. If you don't understand one, you're going to have trouble understanding the other. It's really important to understand that distance, timing, the resolution of different steps that are revealed to the player, all of those things happen in a tabletop game, but the way it's done in a tabletop game, you can see the mechanics. Because I'm rolling dice and going, okay, well, your character didn't see that, so you get run over. But in a video game, you have to do all that invisibly. You have to think about the things that you take for granted in a tabletop game, and which you also take for granted in a video game. You know, not that many people really stop and ask, how did we get to this range between these four guns, and how we decided which one was better than the other one? How do we get to structuring the hit matrices? You know, I mean, I used to sit around for hours, you know, when I worked in video games going, okay, so let's see, I need to have them die 32.4 times every time and you know, but that was the same elements that were going to drive my tabletop stuff as well.
How do you feel about that status?
It's weird.
Weird?
Okay, you gotta understand, guys. I write games, and up until the last 10 years, we did that quietly and no one ever knew who did it. You know, you'd buy your game, you take it home, you go, wow, this was really great. And you never stop to go, gee, I wonder what Warren Spector is like. You know, you just wouldn't play Thief. So, I'm kind of used to being invisible. And I appreciate you guys like what we do. But it is kind of weird sometimes having people come up and go, hey, can I have an autograph? Because I'm going, why do you want my autograph? And do I owe you money? So, for me, you know, I love running across you guys. It's great. Sometimes a little overwhelming. Sometimes it gets really weird. For example, when my wife and I went out, we bought her new car. We're signing the papers and she's off doing the paperwork and all that. And I'm standing next to the sales.
Give me just a sec, Mike.
Okay.
And I'm
he's running out on me now here.
Hello, Mike.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that you spent a week with Adam Badowski, you know, workshopping ideas of what should be in the game. And of course, some of them got scrapped because of logistics, budget, work hours. Maybe they just didn't fit into the game that Cyberpunk ended up being. Can you share some of those things that ended up being scrapped?
The main things we had to do to get 77 to work, and I would say keep my side, would be keep it simple. We wanted to, for example, have roles, because roles are very important in Cyberpunk, but you have a lot more slack to have multiple roles when you're dealing with a tabletop game. You have a lot more error to, you know, work through. So I remember Adam and I sitting down there and we had this big pie chart. What was it? Yeah, I guess you call it a pie chart. And we basically, what can we get in here? Because we can't do all the roles. And what we ended up with was a good portion of what roles would work for most people. We had, oh man, everybody and his brother. Rockstar was the last group that we talked to before we ran across CD. And we still have Michał Nowakowski's letter to our business manager saying, we grew up playing Cyberpunk and we'd like to do a game. And, you know, we kind of went, okay, sure, pull it, why not, you know? And remember, my job back then was to go out to see studios and go, can they do any of this? And I got up to CD and said, no, they can do all this. And they also care. You know, and I see scripts, I see the storylines, So I'm involved in it. They offered me the chance to do that. That I call serious respect.
Really lovely to see you. Welcome to Poland. I would like to ask about Keanu. Whose choice was this to have him as this wonderful, iconic character? We love him so.
Oh, yeah, the great part about it is that Johnny Silverhand is a real asshole. He really is. He is an amazingly broken guy. And one of these days, you know, we've talked about this at CD about, you know, kind of giving the back history of it. So we have this guy that, as I said a few years ago, you know, if my daughter brought him home and said, "This is my boyfriend, Johnny," I'm not sure whether I'd shoot her or him or both. And we have this just, you know, not nice person, because he is so broken, played by the nicest guy on earth. You know, and I looked at it and said, I don't even know how that happened, you know. And there's a great story I love to tell about this, and about Keanu getting selected for this. My wife and I were out in Poland, and we were going to be there seeing the, I guess you would call it the mocap stuff that would be going into '77 for Johnny. And Amelia Polat said, well, you know, the guy we got for Johnny doesn't have blonde hair. I said, well, I can work with that. You know, I mean, it will have been 40 years. He probably changed it at least once. You know, and well, he does, actually the actor does play, he does play in a band. Okay, that's good. You know, I was in a band too, but you know, my stuff was probably cruddy. And they kind of went back and forth, and I said, okay, so who? And they said, well, we want you to see what we're doing first. We want you to guess. And so I'm sitting here going, I have no idea at all. And we're sitting there, and my wife looks up and she says, it's Keanu Reeves.
Different parties where the Reed will die, Tommy will, Reed will live and Tommy will die.
Are you telling me that you expect happy endings in Cyberpunk?
No, I don't. But the question is, was that all from the start, that there's nothing else? Because partially when Johnny dies and goes with Alt, V still will die. And is it like kind of irony that even you kind of love someone because they knew each other for a long time, nothing matters at this point. Like, we are just a person and nothing else. Like, it isn't kind of ironic that at the end one person only will live?
No. You have to understand how cyberpunk or the genre works. It's about choices. Okay, think back to like...
I know that is a choice, but I mean that it's kind of ironic that this is the like kind of thing that repeats itself. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, this is part of irony, because the same as with the edge runners, they thinking that they can make it out, but they don't. The one person will still live where the other will die.
Well, you know, I'm not...
part of irony of that genre, kind of.
I'm not exactly done yet with what I'm going to do to the characters in Edge Runners at one point, but that's another story. You players over there doing Lucy, you're in trouble. Seriously, in any story like that, particularly the cyberpunk story, there's going to be a tragedy, and the biggest tragedy is when you have an undying love that is going to end up wrong. One of the things people don't understand, for example, about Johnny and Alt, is that Alt is the only person Johnny has ever loved, period. So this is one reason he's so hung on her, and in the end, him going with her, going off into, you know, the space zone, that's their happy ending. But it's not going to be a happy ending for Rogue, because Rogue was the girlfriend that got left behind. Likewise, you know, when you really think about it, characters in the Edge Runners have the same tragic background, but we understand that it isn't always going to be happy endings. And therefore, the loss makes a lot more sense. Okay, you're going to have to put the mic closer to your mouth, and you're going to have to speak up.
So we know what happens on Earth. Have you written anything what happens in space? Okay. So you have heard a lot about what happens on Earth, what happens in Europe, America, and so on. What happens in space? We know about the space station, but not much else, if I remember correctly.
We don't, and part of that is we haven't really worked out much on it, either us or CD, and they've had 50 more years to mess with it. I have a book I'm working on right now where we will visit almost every single spot in the Earth-Moon system, but we're still working out how that's going to go. So what's going to happen on Luna? We don't know yet. You know, hopefully this week when I go on over to CD Projekt after I finish seeing all you guys, I'll find out what we could be doing, and we'll thrash it around until we get an answer, because that's how you build things.
Hi. A huge fan of your work, and I just wanted to ask, because recently Guilty Gear Strive had a collaboration with CG Projekt Red, and they added Lucy as a playable character. So I wanted to ask, do you have any weight in decisions?
Wait. Slow down.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly, I do not speak Polish. I will never be able to speak Polish.
Fair enough. Okay, so recently Guilty Gear Strive had a collaboration with CD Projekt.
You're right.
Project. And they added Lucy as a playable character. So I just wanted to know, do you have any weight on a decision which characters get to be added in such collaborations, or is all CD Projekt?
Not really. There's a lot going on there. You know, there's a reason why when we read the magazines, they call this a franchise now. So this would be like trying to know everything happening in Star Wars. And years ago, I worked for LucasArts, and I never knew what was going on. You know, when it's that big, you kind of hope you've got it worked out. So occasionally, I'm the last person to know. But the great part is I trust their instincts, because they're usually the same ones I have. So the Guilty Gear thing did not throw me off. Instead, I went, oh, well, I guess when I have to get Guilty Gear, I'll start playing again.
Okay, we have room. It's a pleasure, and give me just a second. I'm gonna switch to Polish real quick to announce your further steps. Mike będzie podpisywał od godziny 14 w hali numer